Good morning and welcome to this REC webinar entitled Creating the Agility to Flourish in a Post-COVID-19 World. My name is Richard Charnock and I hope you can all hear us clearly. Please let us know using the text box for questions on the right-hand side of your screen. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible today during the webinar, and we're due to finish just after 11. If you wish to ask any questions, please use the text box provided and we'll try to answer them all. If we can't, we'll ensure they're covered in the follow-up email with slides and the poll questions. Last week's webinar was a fantastic view on mental health and is available for everyone to listen online at the REC website. We've analysed the feedback from attendees of the last 4 webinars so that we're being told consistently that there is a significant confidence that the economy and recruitment businesses will bounce back post-COVID-19. We've faced a new reality and rapidly adapted our businesses and ways of working to fit the new norm. But we're not going to be in this state forever. We need to start looking to the future and think about how our businesses will look as we emerge from the other side of this crisis. Over the next hour, we'll discuss what we can do to prepare your business for the post-COVID-19 world, to refine your purpose and your strategy and come out of this stronger and ready. We're joined today by Dave Pye and Bradley Plax from Augment. Augment are business consultants and strategic advisors to the recruitment industry. Brad and Dave work in a non-exec advisory capacity with their clients both in the UK and abroad. Dave is well known as an MD and CEO within the industry and is presently a non-exec director of both recruitment and technology businesses. Bradley's been in the recruitment industry for over 25 years as a recruiter, business director and non-exec director, and Bradley's better known to you all as the founder of Broadbean. Also joining us today is Paul Jacobs and Howard Greenwood from Love Work Life. Their consultancy provides ethical support to help drive both business and personal growth. Paul has spent over 40 years in the recruitment industry and is the former managing director of Office Angels. Howard has spent over 25 years in the industry and is a proven track record of managing businesses, increasing both their revenues and profitability. The recruiters are telling us that they've adapted to the changes required for continuing to do business during the crisis. Whilst there are still some concerns, most of those recruiters are thinking about how to prepare for a post-COVID-19 world. They're seeking to retain some of the new positive ways of working, whether that is new tech or flexible working. But they're struggling to balance this against the need to hit the ground running. What do you think is a modern contemporary recruitment business should look like post-pandemic, and how can recruiters build on the lessons learned and retain the new good practices? Let me in the first instance turn to Bradley for this question, please.
Thanks, Rich. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is safe and well. I think the 4 of us come together today to talk in the most positive way we possibly can. And to your point earlier on, Rich, you mentioned whilst there are still some concerns. So I don't want to focus on any negatives, but I would just like to start by just adding a touch of realism to things, that there are many opportunities moving forward. And I've got huge faith in our industry to really bounce back. But I would also urge business owners just to exercise caution and learn from what's gone on at the moment. I can remember back in 2002, I had a recruitment business that I started in 99. I think we had 40 or 50 people, and then the telco market crashed and WorldCom went down and we were owed huge sums of money. And after really growing quite rapidly, it didn't take long before we had to make some drastic cuts. And I think the one thing I'd urge people to think about moving forward, just to put a bit of realism to what the economy is going to look like for the foreseeable, is just live within your means and really double down on where you're spending money to make sure that you are able to survive any future downturn, maybe better than you have been now, because I think there are so many stories where there's been some shrinkage in our industry. And I think if we can help people just become a little bit more resilient from a business perspective and get a few more reserves behind them, And I think moving forward, there'll be a lot more stability longer term. So I just really wanted to make that point, not to be negative, but just to add a touch of realism, because I think there's many advisors out there, and the commentary is it's all going to be wonderful. And I think there will be significant opportunity. It'll be naive and remiss of me not to mention that we also need to be realistic. But moving on from that point, what does a modern contemporary recruitment business look like? So I've spoken before and used the words kindness and compassion, and I feel so strongly about this. I think there's a significant opportunity to still make money with those values, and I think that stretches internally and also to your communications with clients and candidates. Edelman did a report last week, and they mentioned the new CEO is the Chief Empathy Officer. And that really resonated with me because I think leadership from the top really needs to be in tune, not only with its own people, but with clients, with customers, with candidates, and recognizing that actually in the world that we live in today, the way we have all tried to help each other, collaborated both as an industry and as a society in general, I think that for me really should be taken forward into what the new world looks like when we go back into our offices, because I think we should focus on trying to be as authentic as we can and as honest as we can with all of our communications, and I think that will inspire resilience throughout the whole business. I think when we talk about kindness and compassion, many of the big corporate companies are driven by their purpose, and I see no reason why, as an industry, our recruitment businesses shouldn't also be driven by purpose. We know our goal. Our goal is to make money, but I did a talk, when was it? Christmas, beginning of January, around that kind of time, and I talked about purpose, performance, and profit. We know we can make money in a market that allows us to, but are we going to create real value? And I think real value is generated through the purpose and the vision that we have as an organisation. Getting every member of our team to buy into that long-term vision and that long-term purpose, and being able to communicate that with all that we do interactions with, so clients and candidates. And just looking at the sector that you work in and looking at the companies you recruit for and looking at what their purposes are from an environment viewpoint, from a sustainability viewpoint, from a people viewpoint, just trying to align yourselves to what's going on out there in the bigger world outside of your offices. And I think there is some significant value to be had from recognizing that having a purpose will actually contribute significantly to your bottom line down the line. And I think relationship-driven businesses rather than transactional-driven businesses will be reflective of what modern culture looks like. And I think that's where the significant value is. I think being able to show you care is so important. I think that starts with how you look after the well-being of your teams. I think the KPIs that we have in the industry sometimes need to be challenged. We don't need to be getting people to be on the phone all day for the sake of being on the phone. We need them focused on quality over quantity. We need them developing relationships and communicating with people in a way that is, I mentioned earlier on, authentic, so that those relationships can be taken through the test of time. And I think many companies that I'm seeing that are being able to survive the current COVID-19 crisis have really strong, deep, meaningful relationships. And whilst their businesses have still been impacted, those that have got strong relationships will be able to pick things up quicker than those that are just focused on the one deal and then moving on to the next. It's about understanding your clients. And I say that compassion and that empathy is, I think, is the new currency moving forward for me. And I think if you can show you care at a level that is greater than you've ever done before, I think you'll build a really, really successful business. So that's the biggest thing that I want to get across, showing that you care, compassion, kindness. I think historically our industry has always thought they're quite soft words and soft skills. I think the way the world's working at the moment, everyone is striving to engage with people that offer those qualities, and those that do, I think, will become very successful.
Thank you very much, Bradley. That's a great insight. Paul, would you like to carry on from Bradley's point, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're keeping well. I completely endorse everything Bradley's just talked about. One of the things that I've learned over, as Richard explained, I've been in the industry since '76. That's quite a long time now. And although what we're going through is unquestionably extraordinary, things do go, as you know, in cycles. And it's a fact that every 7 to 10 years we go through some kind of recession or even depression as a not only a country but globally. We were due a recession regardless of the coronavirus, so I think this was coming in our direction. And one of the things I always say to my clients is that we have to have what I always call a rainy day fund. I always make the joke that we need enough money to get through 3 months if we didn't make a single placement or get a single temp or contractor out working, always believing that wasn't possible. But of course, who knew that this day was going to arrive on our doorstep? I always look for at least 3 months money in the bank, always. And I try very hard to get my customers, my clients, to a minimum, to about 6 months money sitting in the bank, which at least gives people the comfort of being able to sleep at night. And although I know that's not easy, particularly for very small businesses, fully aware of how difficult it can be, it is something that I think all businesses need to aim towards, because days like these do come around. This is in itself an extraordinary time, but on the other hand, it's not unusual for us to have these dips. So one of the things I think we've got to learn from is not to, and I'm sure you don't, but not to take as much money as you can out of your business, but always to try to get between 3 to 6 months money sitting in the bank for something calamitous. And my goodness, this is very close to that. So build the funds in your business is certainly very important. The other issue I would add is credit control. Again, I would think that most people are pretty hot on credit control, but with small businesses, something to think very hard about is the software that you might be using on platforms like Xero, for example, to help you with your credit control, to do things in an automated fashion. And if you haven't got a financial controller or a bookkeeper coming in or permanently working for you, I would urge you to look at the software available to use within your business to be chasing down monies without you having to do too much work. Because as we're well aware right now, and I've come off of a conference call just before this one, chasing down money can be rather tricky, particularly when you're looking at maintaining client relationships. And at this moment, we know that clients are holding on as best they can to monies to help their cash flow, our monies. And I'm sure there are quite a number of people listening who perhaps had wished they'd chased down monies owed to them before this crisis kicked in. But just a point worth making, that I think credit control is something very high on the list. I think the third thing I'd bring in is really this whole issue when we're looking into what the new world of work is going to look like. You know, we've talked for a very, very long time about embracing technology, artificial intelligence. We're all aware of it. We know very well that technology will continue to get more and more sophisticated. I mean, frankly, if the Skypes and the Zooms of this world ever needed a period of time to finesse their product, this was it. And I guess we all wish we had shares in some of those businesses, because the level of new subscriptions is astronomical. And what will emerge will be much more sophisticated software that we'll all be using. A lot of it will be white labeled for us. And I think we've got to urge our clients to start to interview candidates through these methods. Keep in mind that when we return to work, we're still going to be in a position where we're having to deal with social distancing. Candidates and clients are going to be very uncomfortable for some period of time in meeting each other physically, as it were. So we are going to need to be pushing very hard to encourage clients to interview, meet our candidates via technology. Now, I think that presents brilliant opportunities for us. I was thinking about this subject prior to, I was thinking about it yesterday, just prior to the conference call today. And remembering that in the 70s, when I started in the industry as a junior interviewer for Alfred Marks Bureau, we had to interview candidates by our desks. We had 20 minutes per candidate, and we had to make them 3 interviews whilst they sat with us. And our method of presenting candidates was verbal. We had to pick up the phone and spec in candidates. We had to present them verbally. Thinking back, it was a far better method of persuading or influencing clients to meet candidates than what we do today, which is the use of CVs, which I know everybody will agree with me is a horrible method of presenting candidates. It's print. It's all it is. And although we work very hard at trying to make our CVs look a whole lot better than the candidates often give to us, it is still that horrible one-dimensional means of presentation. Looking at video conferencing, we have this great opportunity, not only verbally to present candidates, but as it were, they can meet each other. And I think that whilst we haven't got lots of time today to discuss the various methods that we can use to present candidates, it does present an enormously big opportunity. And I think when we get beyond the point where, please God, this horrible plague that's been sent upon us disappears, I think that it'll become habit. I think we'll be in a position where presenting candidates to clients will become the norm. That also means, looking at how we manage our people, that we probably want extended hours, because the time that candidates will want to be or be able to speak to clients will be first thing in the morning and early evening when they're at home in the privacy of their own homes where they can talk confidentially. So we'll be arranging interviews very regularly outside of working hours. That then brings into focus how our people work for us. They start earlier, I suspect. They finish a bit earlier. They start later. They finish later. That's also good for our ecology. If you haven't got people schlepping into the office all at the same time, going home all at the same time, that's great for the office, great for the ecology. Also means perhaps we could consider taking smaller offices, because we're also going to have the issue, that's a very nice issue, of people being able to work from home. We've proven that that can be the case during this period. And that it gives you also the opportunity, if you're working internationally or want to work internationally, to be employing people that would be working, as it were, permanently from home, because the technology is there. And as I've already said, that is going to improve. I think that the other thing I would add here is that if we're going to be using technology to a much larger degree, you have to be looking at your CRM system. And I work with lots of recruitment businesses around the UK. Obviously, they all have CRM systems, and to a varying degree, the consultants use them reasonably well or badly. I think going forward, CRM systems are a must. We have to make sure everything is documented on them. If you're working with people remotely, you can only manage what you monitor. And frankly, making sure that everything is on the system becomes an imperative. How else can you know what people are doing unless you can actually see it? So I think that becomes extremely important, and looking at your CRM systems, whether they're fit for purpose or need to be improved, I think becomes very important. And the last point I will make here is the opportunity that we're going to have very soon to be providing interim and temporary contractor staff. The thing I know about coming out of these kind of situations is that the first market that really picks up is short-term labour. Organisations that have laid off permanent staff are very reluctant to take on perms again. Therefore, the market grows very quickly in that flexible working space. So if you're already in that space, great. If you're not in that space, you need to give very strong consideration to getting into it pretty urgently, looking for funding methods. So there's, as you're well aware, lots of companies out there that provide funding opportunities for you. I'd start to get your act together in those spaces if you're not in the temp or contract market, because I think there'll be a big opportunity as we emerge very soon.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. Great insight. Dave, would you like to give us your views on what a modern contemporary recruitment business should look like post-pandemic, please?
Thank you, Richard. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to summarise my my thoughts as to what a modern company will look like with three things. The first one is trust. The second one is accept this fact: virtual teams are here to stay. And the third one is that resilience will matter even more. So a modern recruitment company, as a leader of a modern recruitment company, your responsibility is to maintain and rebuild where necessary trust. Because everything of value as we look forward into the new world of work is going to be built on trust. Sales, net promoter scores, innovation, leadership, diversity, talent hiring, everything relies on trust. And the big question for us as leaders as we face the new world is not, do I like you, but it will be, do I trust you? The reason people are going to stay with your organization, the reason that people are going to grow with your organization is going to be, do I trust you? And now is a huge opportunity, I think, out of a crisis to build on and rebuild trust. And for me, there's always been a tension in leadership, in recruitment particularly, about confidentiality versus transparency. How transparent should I be as a leader? And I would say that a new modern recruitment company, a new modern recruitment leader, the bias is towards transparency, because the trust is now going to be very much the bottom line. Turn that into your sales approach, because I think to win in a post-COVID world, you've got to sell on value. It's no good talking about discounts and promotions and margin reductions. You've got to sell on value. And to sell on value, the currency of value is trust. So you've got to be a trustful leader in a trustful organization. It's built by trust. And the third thing about trust for me is we're in a world where you've got two choices. You can either give or you can get. It's that give versus get approach. And if I were a leader running a recruitment business now, right now, I'd be asking, what can I give? What service can I give away? What can I give to add value as I come out of this COVID situation? Because as I add value and as I give, that will build trust. Second point is that for me, virtual teams are here to stay. We heard Chris Whitty say yesterday that it's likely that social distancing is going to remain possibly to the end of the year. So the fact that we're all seeing people on Zoom and go to meetings and things like that, that's going to stay. You know, I think you need to make a commitment to your teams that the way that we're working now is possibly how it's going to be for quite a while. And the key thing for me is that physical distance does not make you remote from your team. And I think as leaders, that's one of the things that we're going to have to get our heads around. Physical distance doesn't make us remote from our teams. So a modern recruitment company, the things that do keep you away from your teams is strategic distance. In other words, as a leader, are you aligned with your team? Do they know what you're thinking? Do they know where you're going? If you've got strategic alignment, the physical distance doesn't matter. The second one is operational distance. That's what can make you divorce from your team. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what you're expecting them to do. They're looking to you to lead them so that you can help them operationally. And if physical distance doesn't make you remote from your team distance does. Because the team that you lead right now needs to commit together that you're going to finish and cross the line together, wherever that is. And we don't know where that is yet, because it's a new world that we're facing. But you need to commit to do it together, because we're going to see more blended teams, both at office and at home. And then the third point, and this is a big one for me, is resilience. Brad used the phrase bouncing back. In some respects, there isn't a back. The back has gone. It's about bouncing forward. And bouncing forward into whatever the new reality is means that we as leaders in our sector, in our industry, have got to be smarter. We've got to be wiser. And the thing is, when we're under stress, our brains go for certainty. They want to know what is certain. And it's very difficult as a leader in this world in which we're living to deliver certainty. Bounce forward for me means you've got to be, as a leader, a bit more curious. You've got to help them and help your people understand where they're going. And curiosity for me is three things. It's mindfulness, it's empathy, and it's humility. And Brad spoke to some of those things earlier on. And mindfulness for me is being more situationally aware. So in a modern recruitment company, and you're the leader of this modern recruitment company, you've got to have a better grasp of where you are. And ask yourself this question, really good coaching question for your teams. What do I know to be true? What do I know to be true? And work with that. Empathy is being more other aware, being more aware of others, of that person across the table, of that person on the Zoom call, of that client that you're speaking to. Just make sure that as a modern recruitment leader, you are more empathetic. And again, you can ask yourself this question: what needs to be said that hasn't been said? What haven't we really covered? Let's unearth the things that really matter, because to the point earlier about trust, you're going to try and get through this in this modern recruitment world, and you're going to get over the line together. Celebrate the progress that you're making. And humility is a simple one. It's about being more self-aware. Do you know who you are? As a modern leader, are you confident in who you are and what you're about? Because who you are at your best is going to make you make better decisions for your company. And if you look at those things, resilience, trust, and the fact that the virtual teams are here to stay, I think they're three key aspects to help a modern recruitment company bounce forward into the new world of work.
Thank you, Dave. That's fascinating. So, I mean, in a very brief summary so far, we've got empathy from Brad. I loved that Chief Empathy Officer phrase that Brad used. Paul talked about keeping a reserve and embracing technology. And Dave, you were just talking about alignment of teams and leadership and self-awareness. Howard, what would you like to add to this question about what a contemporary recruitment business will look like post-pandemic, on top of what's already been said?
Thanks, Richard, and good morning all. I hope everyone's fit and well. Well, where do I start? There's not a lot left to pick over from there. I think from, in my life, I think I've been classed as a beautiful dreamer. And I remember 2 years ago, stood presenting, should I say, to lots of recruitment leaders at a recruitment conference about the digital wave, and the digital wave is coming. And a lot of people looked at me in that way and thought, you are a beautiful dreamer. We're not going to change our world. Well, I think all the clients now have had a taste of that honey, and therefore they'll want more and more of a digital approach into their business. So as Paul said, actually bringing that digital marketplace into your recruitment process and putting a true digital brand together will give your clients and your candidates a far better experience. And that goes to what both Brad and Dave were saying about that trust and creating a business where there is empathy and where people are giving to their audience. And the more we give back to our audience, I think, the more we will get back from them. So that word trust becomes very important. But I think the word that we like to label ourselves is with consultant, recruitment consultant. We class ourselves as a consultancy, and yet genuinely, do we truly consult with our clients and our candidates, or are we still this transactional type of marketplace? And I think we are a transactional marketplace, and if you want to sort of fix that hole where the rain comes in, that's the bit where I would start at, because the pressure we put on ourselves as recruiters are genuinely about working those contingency jobs. You've got so many jobs that you're working all these jobs for free. I think there's a very big opportunity now for recruitment to really change its mindset and work with our clients to change their mindset about recruiters and how recruitment works. And I think if you've been looking at what's all's been posted on the recruitment websites and on the LinkedIn, etc., we seem to have got away from that. Here's a recruiter going out and having, a big drinking session. Here we are on our winners trips, etc. It's here we are now having a business session on Zoom. Here we are about creating information for each other on Zoom, and it's more about the care and the control of each other. And I think if we can spend that and push that and promote that wisely, can we not then go back to clients and start to sell retained business where we're actually getting paid for what we do? Because getting paid for what we do takes a lot of the stress that comes with recruitment. And if we can sell on that point that, you know, everyone says, oh, I'm great when I'm working at stress. Well, when you work under stress, what happens is you actually start to do things faster. When you start to do things faster, you start to lose certain parts, you start to cut corners, and therefore your service isn't that particularly good because you start to miss things. So if we can actually be paid for what we do and you take that bit of pressure off ourselves, then all of a sudden we become a little bit more forward thinking and we're more enjoined with our client because they have a bit of the skin in the game and we have some skin in the game, but it takes a massive amount of pressure off. And I think as a true recruitment agency now, that word consultative needs to be sort of used in its proper term. Rather than transactional, we become a relationship-based agency. And that to me then all boils down to the mission. And the mission that you have for your business, whether it's a value proposition, a mission statement, if that is about people first and you're putting people absolutely at the top of your list and money making at the bottom of your list, you'll find that your candidates and your clients will rather get on that journey with you because you're actually helping them and they feel the value that everyone's talked about and they'll come on that journey with you. And I think if you refuse to change in this marketplace, then you will be the fool on the hill left at the end and everyone else has moved forward. So you've got to really work hard on that. So I think, you know, everyone said so many great things, but to me, that getting the work-life balance between you, your staff, your clients and your candidates together to benefit the 3 C's constantly, to me, is absolutely paramount for a modern contemporary recruitment agency. And being at the forefront of that digital revolution is absolutely the way to move forward. And if we can move from being a contingency transactional recruitment marketplace to a relationship paid marketplace, how much better would that feel for everybody in this room or everyone on this webinar room, that you know where your money's coming from, because then when you're looking at your forecast and you're looking at what's coming through the door, you can see that rather than I've got a potential from this guy, potential from this lady, potential from that lady, because it's all potential, because it's all contingency. If you're already getting paid for it, then that makes your cash flow so much better. It makes your relationships with your candidates and clients so much better because you are all intrinsically joined together. And that is where trust becomes the key word, as Dave said.
Thank you very much, Howard. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you so much. Before I move on to the poll question, and the first poll question we're going to have, it's the first of 2 for the audience. Bradley, can I just ask you, we've had a question from the audience just for you to repeat your 3 Ps, please. It was purpose. If you could just repeat them for the audience.
Sure. Purpose, performance, and profit. And just to clarify the thought process behind that, without purpose, you might have a chance of still making money. If you want to create real value, if you want to look at your staff retention, if you want to look at the interactions with your clients and your candidates, if you are all driven by a greater purpose, if you're able to get that vision and that purpose out to the wider business community that you're working with, I believe you will then increase the performance internally. And as a result, that should impact positively your bottom line.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bradley. Let's go on to our first poll question. So this question asks you, as the audience, what are the most important lessons you've learned during this crisis? Could you please choose up to 3? Unfortunately, the technology won't restrict you to 3, but please choose up to 3. And you'll see that, so have cash reserves, invest in technology, reduce office costs and embrace new ways of working. So that's kind of like, e.g. home working, that kind of stuff. keep informed of market trends and projections, and build close relationships with clients and candidates. And we'd appreciate if you can answer those for us. That would be great. But while the audience are answering that question, that poll question, I'd like to go back to to our fantastic speakers today, and ask you, could you just add any last final points on what you've personally learned from this crisis so far?
Yeah, perhaps I could just add to what Howard's just been talking about. This is Paul. And I think we often talk about trusted advisor. It's quite a cliched expression these days, but Howard's made a very valid point here. You know, it's a crazy industry. We are a no-win, no-fee industry. There aren't many businesses or organizations out there that do that. If you phone up your lawyer, as we're well aware, the clock's ticking. He'll ask you about you, your family, but he's actually charging you for that every 15 minutes. We, on the other hand, and we've done this historically from over 100 years back, work jobs and assignments without any guarantee of income. And our percentage return, the percentage wins on those opportunities depends on the business, but proportionately not very high. And I want to pick up Howard's point. I mean, I think we have this brilliant opportunity to review how we price our services. We really do need to be looking much more at search and selection style pricing models. I think this trusted advisor positioning is extremely important, and we'll talk shortly about that. But knowing your clients to the extent that they rely upon your advice, they rely upon your counsel, gives you unquestionably exclusive opportunities. And exclusivity is absolutely the desire and the goal of every recruitment business. We don't want to be transactional. We don't want to work in this way. You don't want to be one of 4, 5, 10 recruitment businesses a client is using. And whilst I fully appreciate that that is not an easy thing, I think you do have to look at the nature of your client base, the size of the organizations you work with, the third parties you work through, and so forth, and really think very hard about your client pipeline and the opportunity to develop these deep relationships that Howard correctly was discussing a moment ago.
I agree with that, Paul. I wouldn't mind just adding another point in very quick, Rich, if we've got some time. I think to Dave's earlier point regarding trust, I think that's such a great word that is so relevant to how we should be moving forward. I think that trust actually from the very top has to be internal and external. You want your clients and your candidates to trust you. That comes down back to your purpose. Is that aligned with them? Because people want to work with people who's got similar values. But I would also encourage CEOs, the new Chief Empathy Officer, to trust their staff as well a little bit, because one of the issues that we've got in recruitment, as we all know, it can be a bit of a revolving door. But if you want to create significant value, you've got to be able to also work on retention. So again, I think that leads back into purpose. Why do people want to come and work for you? But it also comes down to how you interact with your team and with your staff and how you're going to manage them. And the guys have spoken about technology, and I think one thing that is become apparent in this crisis is with the likes of Zoom and Teams and whatever other platform you're using, actually we've all adapted reasonably well and we can work remotely. So there's no longer a need to get your consultants to be in the office 8 days a week. I think you look at hiring staff that might be able to work remotely and just come into the office 1 or 2 days. I think we can open ourselves up from a geographic perspective and look to hire the very best people for our businesses that could really add significant value rather than just looking for people that live within a 10-mile radius. So in order for you to do that, though, there has to be a significant element of trust. And it starts by really trying to focus on the well-being of the team that you're working with. And that's their physical and emotional well-being, but also the skills that you give them, the training and everything else. And if you can work on the premise that the new modern world, you need to allow people to develop and be themselves, then I think we can just slightly alter the way we train people. We can get a different style recruiter coming into our business that might add more value than we thought we could get beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's.
Sorry, this is Karen, just running the webinar. I'm afraid I had a problem with the webinar, with the poll, which only allowed you to select one answer. I fixed it now, so I'm just going to close this one and open a new poll, which will allow you to select more than one answer. Apologies.
Thank you. Sorry, I think that was Dave. If you'd like to carry on, Dave.
I was just going to say that to Brad's point, I think for us, as we now work from home, it's important as leaders that we recognise that as we're working from home, it means that we never leave work. Whereas previously, we used to leave work, leave the office and go somewhere. But now we don't leave work, we're always at work. So it's really important, and the thing that I've learned in this crisis, it's really important to take that time to have some space, to do other stuff, to be with your families or your kids or your pets, or just to get out and do stuff. Because it's quite easy to fill your day with all sorts of things, but actually home is now work and work is home. And from a mental health point of view, from a resilience point of view, as leaders, you need to recognise that your people aren't ever leaving work, because now they're at home and they're working. So I think that's an important thing that I've learned, certainly in the last 3 or 4 weeks as we've been through this.
I think to add to that, Dave, it's that's been a long time for recruitment owners and what have you, that your emails are never off and it's forever interrupting your downtime, let's call it. But now working from home, there is no downtime, and I think the big thing that I've sort of learned and sort of been talking to people about is having that routine that you know exactly what you're doing and you know what is work and what isn't work, and it just doesn't therefore blur all into one. And I think it's really important that people create that routine as if you were going to work and have that work routine constantly. And I think it's really important from that. And again, from a health point of view, which we talked a couple of webinars ago, is you still have a due care and attention for your staff, even though they're working at home. So making sure that their workstation is absolutely prime from a physical health point of view, as well as a mental health point of view, is really important. And I think that, to me, is the big things that people are learning from, is that the world has become a very small place now, and everyone is so connected. And now the fact that people are working very remotely doesn't mean to say that you have to be remote. And what Brad was talking about earlier, I hate the word social distancing. I think it's the wrong comment. I think we should be physical distancing, but we should be socially getting closer together and closely working with each other. And that's the other thing that I've learned, is that I've become a lot closer to the people that I care about, because I spend more time talking to them now because I can't see them on a regular basis. And I think that is, again, the same thing as Dave was saying about your staff, being closer to your staff and picking up on those little things are really important. And those agencies that do that will create a really good retention base. And we all know the agencies with a big retention base of their staff generally bill an awful lot of money.
Great, thank you all. I think we'll close poll 1 now. I've had a couple of messages that 1 or 2 still couldn't do it, but you can see the results that we did manage to get in. So, and you will get these results in the slides. So focus on relationships and embracing new ways of working, office costs, and cash reserves are the 3 highest out of the 5 there. So all of those, over 50% of you have learned about those and what needs to be done. Let's move on now to the next big question for our panelists, and that is what can or should recruiters be doing to adapt and be business ready for things return to normal? So this is the $64 million question here. So what is it that members and recruiters can be doing, and whatever that new normal looks like? First off, let's go back to Howard and to lead us off on that one, please.
It's a great question. And do you want to know a secret? I don't think anything that we're going to talk about now is something that people don't already know. But I think what we're actually going to talk about is putting a roadmap into place that people need to follow. And we've all, as leaders, had hundreds and thousands of ideas, but never had the time to implement them. We now need to implement a new working process. So I always split this question when I read this question, I split it down into two areas. You've got your business side, and then you've got your recruitment side. And so from a business side, as we talked earlier on, it's all about being close to the metrics that make your business tick and make your business work. And you need to make that a priority as running your business, that you understand your metrics. As we said earlier on, having part of your business plan is your cash flow. The tax man at some point is going to come and ask for his tax money. So we need to make sure that we are aligning that to one side. So our cash flow is really important. I've talked to lots of agencies that have had massive amounts of eggs in just one basket. And that helter-skelter ride of recruitment all of a sudden becomes a huge problem when your big client stops recruiting. And that's caused a lot of people a lot of issues. So really, from a business point of view, you've got to start to look about the spread of your clients across your business, and you've got to look at the number of clients that you have and what revenue you're generating. And I always work with my clients and say, if your major client is billing more than 20% of your business, then you're putting a lot of your business at jeopardy. So you need to make sure that we have a true line from a business point of view with what's going on. We've talked a lot today about the digital marketplace and what's going on. So your digital strategy needs to be really on point. And that includes making sure that your cybersecurity is absolutely right. If people are working from home, what are their internet connections like to ensure that their calls going out to people, their video calls, etc., are of a reasonable quality. So we've got to start to work on those sort of things like that. And from a mindset point of view, okay, we've got to make sure that our consultants are absolutely aware of everything that's going on. I think sometimes our consultants feel it's a bit like a magical mystery tour. They've no idea what we're doing and where we're going because they don't really know the full plan of what's going on. So if we're going to put a plan into place, we need to make sure that that plan is absolutely spelled out to everybody in the business, and everybody in the business understands that plan. The other side of it is from the consultant side. The consultant side need to get ready now to get back into full working. It's almost like, it's a break and everyone's sort of ticking over. And as we're ticking over, we all know, or what athletes do when they tick over, their performance degrades and their skills degrade. So I think it's now that every client needs to invest heavily into training and development of their staff. And that includes thinking about what you're going to do with your furloughed staff, because your furloughed staff could be off for quite some time, and therefore, what have they been doing? So there needs to be an onboarding strategy for those furloughed staff to come back, which then brings back into that digital process that we're talking about. This is new to everybody, but it's also new to our clients. So can we really introduce this to our clients and help our clients with that? And can we help our staff with that? Therefore, it means that you've got to really train your staff and develop your staff to embrace IT and understand how it works. Nothing could be worse than going on to a digital meeting and you, as the owner of that digital meeting, do not know how your systems work and how that digital process works. What does that say to your client or your candidate if you're speaking to your clients or candidates through that digital process? So you've got to really work on it in that sort of fashion. Paul has said quite a lot through this. If you sort of enter this marketplace, as we've done now, into COVID-19 in your yellow submarine, and you enter still in that yellow submarine, I can guarantee it will sink, and you'll sink. You've got to change your mindset as we come out of this. And we've talked a lot about recruitment, about certain things. To me, this is like the lottery. There's an opportunity now to take a massive amount of money in the marketplace if you get your process right. But you've got to have a ticket to ride to do that. And the ticket is about getting all your staff and all your clients lined up properly so you understand exactly what your clients need and what your staff need. So therefore, your staff now need to be having a more pastoral sort of view of BD to your clients and understanding what the clients need in the next now, when start to recruit, next 3, 6, 12, 18 months, so they can be on board with the client and understand their recruitment needs. If you can understand those recruitment needs, then again, from a mental health and well-being point of view, if your consultants can suddenly start to see what the pipeline looks like into the future, then they can start to build a candidate base for the future, which means they can start to interact with both markets really, really quickly. And that's about bringing both markets together and coming together very, very quickly. So we've got to make sure that when it becomes, and we're glad it's all over, that we're all prepared and ready to move forward. And I think there's an awful lot of things that we've talked about on the first question and what the guys are probably going to talk about on this question that's really important. But now's the time to get that planning in place. Now's the time to do the right things and get it absolutely function. And communicating that to your staff and getting your staff engaged in that is really important. If you talk about making those decision processes, if you're talking about putting new things in process, we should also be talking to our clients and finding what our clients actually like about that process and what part of that process they would really buy into. And if you can start to get the understanding of your client's mindset and your consultant's mindset, then how easy they're making the transition from being a contingency-based agency into a retained-based agency where you start to get paid for what you do. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do that. So I think, you know, as my final part is, you can't afford to slow down. You've got to now understand your why. And I think you've got to be thinking there that everyone should be, ask me why. What is your why? And if you think about that all the time and you drive that why through your staff and through into your outside marketplace and into your marketing, then people will get on your mission and they'll ride with you on that mission until the end. And it has to be absolutely all about the people. And I think both sides of that, getting the business right and getting the consultancy side, the recruitment side right, is the primary object now of what you need to be implementing immediately and start that planning today if you haven't already started it.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you. That's fascinating. Conscious of time, let's move on to Bradley without any delay, please.
Yeah, no worries. I agree with everything Howard just said, and I want to pick up on his point around the why. That leads into the earlier discussions we were having around purpose. And I just think there's a consistent theme amongst everything that we've been speaking about today. Whether you call it your why, whether you call it your purpose, if you can get that absolutely nailed down, if you can communicate that internally and externally to all that you connect with, if you're visible in the marketplace and utilizing technology, social media to a much higher extent, and you share that vision and you share that purpose, I think that's going to be a big thing moving forward. I think one thing that also springs to mind for me is pre-COVID-19. We look at our business yesterday, market wasn't bad. People were making money and everything was going okay. It's really just been this crisis that's hit us all, and many of us in a really significant way. So I think there's a balance, and the balance I want to mention is not everything we did yesterday was wrong. And there are certain circumstances that have happened, global health crisis that's occurred, that's impacted our work rather than the work that we were doing was wrong. And I think it's important to remember that, because I don't think we all need to go down the road of we have to reinvent ourselves. What I do think, though, is it's given us all an opportunity to work out how we can enhance what we've been doing rather than thinking what we were doing was wrong. And I think there is a big difference. So for me, I want to encourage people to be realistic, look themselves in the mirror, take accountability for the way their businesses have run, how you've been as a recruiter, learn from what has gone on, learn from what you've done before in the past that went well, and do more of that, but also take the time to reflect, to recognize there will be certain things you can now implement. You can do things in a way that will be slightly different, that will be more productive for you. I think at the moment, as we look to work our way through this crisis while we're at home, there is some practical things that we should all be doing. Absolutely engaging with everyone that you've spoken to before in the past. But rather than just going in there and standard question when you're looking to recruit again, just really getting to understand that individual, understand the impact that COVID-19's had on their business, their market, what their plans are, how they're feeling. Because at the end of the day, as Howard just said, this is a people business. So not only do we have to look after our own people, what we need to be able to do is engage with people in a way that's just more compassionate, just trying to understand the impact that it has on their business will give you a better understanding of the opportunities that you can potentially work on with them. So I want to see people become more authentic. I want people to be genuinely interested in their clients rather than just worrying about what they can get in the here and now, because I think that will stand the test of time as we progress over the in the coming years. When I was managing recruiters before in the past, the best recruiters for me were the ones that were able to consistently requalify their candidates, consistently requalify their vacancies to see if there's been any change in behaviour. I think at the moment, it's not uncommon, we talk about ABC vacancies, for example. I think now is really important to absolutely qualify everything to the nth degree. So you've got a true understanding of what the new person looks like for the clients that you're hiring. Will they take a different approach to someone being in the office? Will they take the view that actually it's okay for people to work remotely? There's significantly more opportunities available potentially for you to make placements that aren't necessarily going to be restricted by geography. And I think one of the key things is getting a real understanding of what a client really wants moving forward, and equally getting a true understanding of what a candidate may well now want, now that they've been sat at home for the last 5-6 weeks. And does it change their view about commuting? Do they want a role that's more flexible? And I think we need to be asking those questions so we can actually take some practical steps when we come back into our offices, and that we're working with things where we fully understand it. Otherwise, there's going to be a big mismatch between what clients' new expectations are and what a candidate's new expectations are. So that's one thing that I think we should be looking at. And I think my final point is just really focusing on meaningful relationships. Again, I think the way we communicate that internally and externally will enable us to create more opportunities for when things do return to whatever our new normal looks like.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you. That's fascinating. And you've mentioned a couple of things there. You talked about practical applications, practical things. During our last poll question, I urge the audience to stay tuned in, because during our last poll question, I'm going to turn back to each and every speaker and ask them to give one practical piece, one practical nugget of knowledge that they would implement in these times. But before I do, we've got Paul and Dave left to go. So Paul, your views on what should recruiters be doing now to adapt their business ready for the return to the new normal?
Thanks very much, Richard. I think let's get back to practicals. The guys have already given some fantastic tips and techniques, and I would endorse those. I think we've got to be aware of which of our clients are going to hit the ground running. I mean, if as I'm convinced, obviously, our clients are going to be very driven to start getting their businesses back up and running very quickly and driving profits, they will take us with them. So be aware of which of your clients are going to hit the ground running. We need to really, I think we're at that point fairly quickly now, where we need to get back on the tools fast and start to contact our clients to establish their plans. I take Brad's point on board, absolutely. It can't be the old-fashioned questions about what vacancies have you got. That's just hopeless. I think we've got to be far more empathetic and get closer to them. We have to not only work closely with the organizations where we already have this trusted advisor status, particularly those that will be sprinting, as it were, from the starting blocks, but I think using this time at home to start to build those relationships with other customers where we've got this moment to start to get a bit deeper into their businesses, and importantly, people by people, understanding them as human beings, because that is what this business has always been about. It's always been about relationships. It's got almost nothing in many instances to do with our terms of business or the contracts we have with people. At the end of the day, it is about trust. It's about relationships. It's always been that way. That's why our best consultants, and you guys are all very high emotionally intelligent people. Those are the traits we look for in our best consultants, our best people. And there's never been a time that I can think of where using high EQ has been more important. I think importantly, of course, if we're talking about our businesses, we have to talk about candidates. And I really feel that you need to start talking to candidates now to find out how they're feeling, but also importantly, what they are going to want to do when we get back to work, how quickly they want to move, and especially immediately available candidates. I already mentioned the opportunity to do well in the interim market. So you need to be looking at your, excuse me, your talent pool, making sure you've got people available immediately. Just a quick point, the whole area of furloughed staff, we're all very well aware of now, all the rules and regulations around that. One of the things the government have said very clearly is there is nothing wrong, and in fact, they're encouraging you to train your people whilst they're furloughed. And I think that's extremely important, to give them a focus, to give them the opportunity to be coached. And I think that that's something practically you should be doing now, talking to them about the new skills they will need for the new world of work, set them projects, get them involved in your views about what your business model should look like when we start to work again properly. Get them engaged, because as we all know, as good managers, telling people to do something is nowhere near as effective as having people very much bought into and involved in decisions, because if they believe it's their decisions, they're much more likely to follow them through with actions than if you tell people for management to do that. So I think what we want to do is involve people now in helping us to finesse our business model, how we're going to change. To pick up Bradley's point, doesn't mean we have to change radically, but I think there's an opportunity to improve very much, as I said earlier, around the areas of technology, and particularly video interviewing and so forth. You're going to need early adopters in your client base, people that will want to get involved with us around the new technology, around using videos particularly. And we need those early adopters to get ourselves some good quality case studies that we can encourage, as we call them, the laggards, to come on board. But I'll guarantee you within 18 months to 2 years, it will become the norm to be using this media to have our people interviewed. And indeed, for us to take vacancies, for example, and assignments on video conferencing, as opposed to over the phone or on that dreaded email. You start to need to collect lead generation opportunities from candidates too at this point. One of my clients, we've been working on a project of what we don't call backdoor placements. I can tell you now, we've found at least 8 over the last 3 weeks. We know that, unfortunately, sometimes there are people we work with that do the dirty on us and take our candidates without our knowledge. If you ever want to try and find some, inverted commas, free money, now's the time to do it. Go back, check over the last 6 months where you've put forward candidates and establish, particularly through LinkedIn, where they're working at the moment. When you do, you may be delighted to discover you've got some fees sitting there waiting to be claimed. I think, just to pick up Brad's point, and I know we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to stop talking any second now, but I think the whole point about mindset is really important. We've got to convey to our people that this is going to change. We are moving towards a far better place. And to Howard's point, we need to get everybody fighting fit. That means morning, evening, conference, Zoom calls. You need to be making one-to-one calls with your furloughed staff every week. Get on top of your PR and marketing. Make sure that you're starting to make more and more noise about your business, to pick up that point about the why. And I think the important thing here is, what are we going to stop doing when we get into the new world of work? Because if we go into this new world of work with the old model, in my mind, it's entirely wrong. It doesn't mean you have to change radically, but there are things, and you must have been thinking about them, that you need to stop doing. So think about the things you want to do going forward, but importantly, to create the time to do those new things, you have to stop doing bad things, old things that don't work, in order to create the time and space to do that. And I think my last point is very simple. If you haven't got a mentor or business advisor, and of course I would say that, wouldn't I? I think you need one, because one of the things that we all need is somebody we can lean on, someone we can confide in, somebody with grey hair who you can listen to, who you can talk to, who's been through these experiences before and can give you guidance. Because although none of us want a similar situation going forward, there will always be dips coming our way at some stage down the line. Nothing ever is high forever. So I would say learn from this going forward, and consider how your make your business fighting fit for the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. And Dave, finally on this question, please. Dave, are you there? Okay, so I'm sorry about that, listeners. It appears we may have lost Dave at this point. So what we'll do is, can we open the next poll question, please? And we'll do that.
Did you hear me?
If Dave does,
Did I
you
go
there?
for a second? I am here.
Yes,
sorry.
you did. Sorry, Dave. Could you just wrap up on the question for us about what recruiters should be doing now to adapt businesses for when they return to normal, whatever that normal is?
Yeah, I'll do this as quickly as I can. Quick things. So 3 focuses for me: sales in recovery, managing your people, and building on leadership. The sales in recovery bit for me is looking to right-size your sales organization, because we're going to come out of this and go into a new world looking quite different. So you need to look at the salespeople that can build those trusted relationships and build and create value. We need to undertake some sort of viability analysis as to who is going to get us to where we need to be. Who do you want in that foxhole with you as you face the next 12 months of battle? Who is most suitable for the recovery? And the great news is there will never be a better time to hire some excellent people as coming up in the next 6 months. So you may need to backfill some people, and you'll certainly need to upgrade people. Your managers, often in recruitment, sales managers, their best skill is selling. And obviously we'll need more and more sales as we grow. But the key thing is your sales managers are going to need to coach. They're going to need to coach their consultants to talk and communicate value as opposed to price. And some managers can't do this. So we're still in lockdown. So use lockdown as a time to learn. For lockdown, read learning. Look at it and get your managers learning, get some online coaching, get some training, access some management libraries. They must do this, because we're going to need the most intelligent consultants and managers that we can have going forward. And it is going to be hard to sell in some respects in the next 12 months, because many of our clients are going to be poorer, they're going to be more selective, they're going to try and squeeze you, and every point of margin that you can get is going to be really important. So therefore it comes back to my earlier point about selling on value, not price. If the only thing you can talk about is price, we're going to get screwed. So be consultative, listen, ask questions, as Paul was saying, qualify opportunities as you build that pipeline. The salespeople have got to be hunting. Some of your people are still going to be somewhat shell-shocked. You know, we're in day 31 of this lockdown. We don't know how long it's going to go on for, and it's tough. You know, it's tough at the best of times. Change is tough. The day in the life of a leader that we've got now is very different to what it was a few months ago. So how can you help your people overcome them being a little bit shell-shocked? And 3 little techniques for me. I use what I call a 3 times 5 method, which means they do 3 things 5 times a day to build a habit. Things like that they may have emotions that they don't want. They may have some visible tension that you can see on Zoom in their body. They may be exhibiting behaviours you don't want. Drinking a bit more alcohol, putting things off. 3 times a day, do something 5 times to relax, i.e. exercise, walking, watching a bit of TV, whatever it is, encourage them to do that. Focus them on what they can do, not what they can't do. Your job as a leader is to encourage them and to manage them through this. So focus them on what they can't do, and celebrate progress with them. And the final thing in terms of what we're looking at is leadership through adversity. I'm very fortunate that I'm on the board of a healthcare charity that's based in the Middle East. Every day I check in with the hospital. We've got a big hospital, obviously they're dealing with COVID. And a couple of days ago, the medical director of the hospital had all his leadership team there. And he said something that I wanted to share with you. He said that leaders absorb fear and exude hope. He's a medical director of our hospital. He is at the front line of this particular fight. And he said, leaders absorb fear and exude hope. And that's your job as a leader. And there's 5 steps for me very quickly to help with that. Have a plan, track your progress. Yeah, don't waste time on non-essentials. Leave some hope for the other side for this recovery. Yeah, we've said that virtual working is here to stay. Just continue to exude hope. Paul said it earlier, build a fortress balance sheet. Liquidity in your business is really important now. If you can get cash, get more than you need, because you're going to want to have some more people. You're going to want to use it in the next 6 months as we come out of this together. Think money in, not money out. You can control your costs, but you're never going to control them as much as you can get more money in. So focus on revenue generation. Build a team, and as a leader, make decisions and make them quickly. Keep people informed, let them know what you're doing. And the thing is, we can work it out together. You know, in my life, we've not known anything like this, but we can get through this together. Real love for your people is about real trust for them, because this too will end. We know that we can get through this, and just say thank you lots and lots of times to them, because it's about bouncing forward. Bouncing forward as a person, bouncing forward as a team, bouncing forward as an industry and as a sector, and we'll get the other side of this.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to all our speakers. That's fantastic. What I'd like to do now is open up the second poll. This is one for those that have been on our webinars before. You will have seen this poll question. We ask it every week. So how confident are you that the economy will bounce back? So if you can fill that in for us. And while you do, I'd like one top practical tip. The first thing you would do if it was your business, from each of our speakers now, and you know, 1 or 2 sentences each, please. Just what's the first thing you would do now to prepare for the changing world?
I'm happy to start with that. It's Howard here. I think from my place is that a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but not a lot actually grows there. So you've got to get out of your comfort zone. And I think the best way to get out of your comfort zone is to have that plan in place of where you're going and what you're going to be doing and challenging yourself, but make sure that you communicate that plan to absolutely everybody. But communication is sometimes lost in its transition. And I think you've got to make sure that everybody in the business understands the plan and understands their part in the plan and how they're going to help execute the plan, but also how they're going to be benefiting from the plan. And I think that would be my big thing at the moment here, is to get yourself out of the comfort zone, get yourself a plan, and make sure that plan's communicated to everybody.
Hi, it's Paul. Hi, it's Paul. So I would say, I think that it's really about getting your heads in the right space now. We all have our demons, if I can use that expression, or those voices, those little imps that sit on your shoulder and whisper in your ear constantly, you can't do this, you're not good enough, it's not going to work, you've done it before, it failed. All those horrible little sentences and voices that penetrate our minds. My best advice is, when you hear those voices, when you hear those sentences, flick those imps off your shoulder, get rid of them, because I think you've got to get yourself into a space where you are saying, I can do this, we are going to be fine, we are going to go into this new opportunity and smash it. And I think you've got to get that vibe out of your, as it were, your minds, into shout it out of your voice and let your guys know just how enthusiastic and how proud you are of your business and how excited you are about the new opportunities ahead. And we get back to where we were prior to this horrible situation and really strike forward and take advantage of the market opportunities we're going to get.
I agree with all that, Paul. This is Brad. For me, a couple of things that spring to mind. I think it's really important to act naturally, be authentic, allow people to see who the real you is, allow your clients and candidates to understand who the real business is, I think we've spoken before, people buy from people, and I think now more than ever in the world that we live in, if we can show our true, authentic self, I think our levels of engagement will be greater. I think we really want to be visible on our social media, on our communication. You want to be a thought leader. You want to make sure you're communicating more than ever. As the Beatles once said, you don't want to be a walrus. You want to be out there, and you want to be modern, and you want to be agile. You don't want to be slow and cumbersome. And I think the more we communicate and the more we use technology to enhance that communication, the more opportunities will present themselves for us.
And I thought one thing, it's St. George's Day today, isn't it? He stood for courage to face adversity in order to defend the innocent. That's the whole history of St. George. So I thought I spoke about curiosity and creativity. So here's one tip that you can do. You can do a judo flip. And a judo flip brings out your creativity. So if you're a leader now, draw a line down one side of the page and just list every single thing that you can think of that you can do to help yourself manage through this crisis. Write down everything you can do. And on the second side of the line, on the flip side of the line, write down the polar opposite of everything that you would have just written down, the complete opposite. And in that opposite, there may be 20 things, but one of those 20 things may just spark an idea that you can put into action. Creativity, curiosity is not dead in this time of bouncing back. And that's just a practical tip that I would use as I finish for today.
Thank you, and thank you all for your contributions today. I've had some fantastic messages through from the audience today. Apologies that the sound quality wasn't quite professional like Abbey Road, but it is something that we will keep working on. I'd like to remind you all the listeners, that there will be a follow-up email and a summary note by close play tomorrow, and the link to the webinar so you can review it as it's will be out in the next few days. And we do look forward to seeing as many of you next Thursday, same time, 10 o'clock. Stay safe, happy St. George's Day, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.
Cheers, people. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.